everyone. How's everyone doing? Look, I'm still a little congested, as you guys can hear, but I wanted to say hello. I'm trying to give me one sec, y'all, because something's going on with my thing right now and hopefully it's not the internet. Hopefully it's not the internet. Um, one sec, y'all. One sec. Can you guys hear me okay? Let me know in the chat if you can hear me okay. Hopefully I'm not muted. Okay, I'm not muted. All right. Oh, no, we're Tara's like, "Look, I had to stop the Duggar video because I saw you were going live." Shout out to you guys that have been watching, and thank you so much, those that have joined us. That Duggar video is a lot. I will say that much. But I wanted to segue into something that really caught my interest right away. You guys know that I was talking about earlier how Netflix is going to be releasing this little thing about the name of it is Take Care of Maya. Okay. And as I was reading a little bit of the history about what they're trying to talk about, and Netflix showed a little preview. The release was today. I believe the docu-series had been already released on various other like Sundance or something like that. Don't quote me, but it had been released by like other media groups, and they were saying that it was a great documentary. Now, when I was looking into it a little bit more, something piqued my interest, and then I realized I know what it is. One of the doctors that was talked about in this documentary and why I think it's important, especially if you live in Florida, there is a doctor by the name of Sally Smith. Okay, I had heard about her a couple years back, and now it's when I was reading some articles, it's starting to come back to me. So my voice was a little iffy earlier, and I started to do. I was going to do an upload on this, but then I was like, let me play it here and then upload it later. And this is just me reading the article, and then we're going to get into some of these clips that I found. And what I realized, I was doing more research on this doctor. Man, I mean, there's a couple of YouTubers that have exposed this doctor from Florida and why it's important. She's a child abuse pediatrician that holds that title in Florida. Okay. And she essentially, in the last couple of years, has been responsible for basically having the last say and say about who kid gets removed from people's homes through CPS, right? And so I was like, this is definitely an important topic. Now, this documentary of Take Care of Maya has not been released yet. It will be released on the 19th, I think, of this month. Don't quote me on the day, but I believe it's the 19th. And I'm the story in itself, when I was reading it, I said, "Oh my God, this pisses me off so much," because it deals in Munchausen by proxy, and those that know what it's a very heavily misunderstood disorder. Okay, even for myself, and I went to grad school, and we had the DSM. It's very misunderstood. There's a lot of stigma and stuff that comes from it. But I'm gonna play myself here reading this article. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. That'll help me arrest my voice a little bit, okay? Let's go. Netflix is releasing a new docuseries by the name of Take Care of Maya. Maya Kowalski was rushed to the ER at an all-children's hospital in Florida in the early morning of October 7, 2016. She had crippling stomach pain, so severe her knees were going up to her chest and she was screaming. This was related to a rare neurological disorder, complex regional pain syndrome, or CRPS. The 17-year-old's first memory was with her mother's. Days later at the ICU, she kissed Maya on the forehead and told her she loved her, and they'd see each other the next day. Maya says that she never saw her again. Maya's mom, Beata, who was 43, had been accused of child abuse due to Munchausen by proxy, a mental disorder in which a caregiver fakes a cause of symptoms to make a child look sick. She was immediately separated from her daughter. During this time, Beata speaks with a parent advocate, counseling her about how to get Maya back. The advocate says, "Beata, this is the thing you need to understand about these cases. They're not fair. They don't care about the evidence." In the ICU, Beata, who by the way was a trained
registered nurse told the doctors to administer a high dosage of ketamine, the one treatment that the Kowalskis and Maya's doctor believed to be effective for her pain. The request raised concerns among the staff, and Child Protective Services was called, which sent Dr. Sally Smith. A court ordered psychological evaluation eventually determined that Beata did not have the illness. Still, Dr. Smith, a child abuse pediatrician who handled investigations for the Pinella County, a county with the highest rate in Florida of removing children from families under investigation, and the investigating team continued to push the case. People on child protection teams try to make the best decision for the safety of children. Sometimes parents have different perspectives. This is what Dr. Smith has told People magazine. Less than a week after Maya checked into Johns Hopkins, she was placed in state custody and remained in the hospital away from her parents and her younger brother, Kyle, now 16, for over 3 months. After more than 87 days without her daughter, Beata died by suicide. She says, "I'm sorry," Beata wrote in an email discovered after her death, "but I no longer can take care of the pain of being away from Maya and being treated like a criminal. I cannot watch my daughter suffer in pain and keep getting worse." 5 days later, Beata's death, Maya was released into her father's custody and returned to Venice, Florida. The Kowalskis have since filed a lawsuit against Johns Hopkins, and more than 6 years after Beata's death, the trial will start in September. A spokesperson from Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital would not comment directly on Maya's case, but shared a statement to People magazine that says in part, "Our responsibility is always to the child brought to us for care. We are legally obligated to notify the Department of Children's and Families when we detect a sign of possible abuse or neglect. It is DCF that investigates the situation and makes the ultimate decision about what course of action is in the best interest of the child." As a home infusion nurse, Beata knew to take detailed notes as evidence of her daughter's symptoms and treatments beginning in 2015 when Maya was 9 years old. The only reason we're able to bring this case to trial, where every other attempt of a similar case in history has failed, is because Beata documented everything and read everything, says Greg Anderson, an attorney for the Kowalski family. "I watched the Kowalskis disintegrate and then try to move on without the linchpin, the wife and the mother," says Anderson. "Beata was a force of nature in taking care of her family. The depth of the loss is beyond words." Anderson has been their attorney for the past 7 years and considers himself an extension of the family, living with the heavy weight of pending litigation. Hoping for an upcoming trial has affected Anderson and his own family. "My 3 kids have literally not known what life is like without the Kowalski's case," he says. Maya's memories are before and after her mother's death, and she doesn't have many reminders of her mother before she died. "I remember a small thing, but not full stories," Maya says. "She was always the type of person to try and make me feel better. She went the extra mile to make people smile." We will be reviewing the Netflix series by the name of Take Care of Maya, which is set to release on June 19th. You guys make sure you subscribe and turn on all notifications so that you know when this drops. Rabbits out. Netflix is releasing a new docuseries by the
So it is a very sad situation. So Maya had this rare disorder. Okay. She was under the supervision of a doctor at the time. Her mother was a registered trained nurse. I believe her specialty was infusion. So one of the things that mom Beata would do is keep specific notes, right? So she takes her to the hospital and she is having, a lot of pain. Ketamine was something that Beata and her and Maya's doctor basically had decided would be an appropriate treatment. Well, that was the red flag for the hospital to call CPS. Now, I want to be very clear about this. And like Lex said, were hospital staff are mandated reporters, right? Um, and then the investigation happens to, it goes over to DCF and they do their investigation. Great. The Glare says he specializes in specialties. Shout out to the Glare. Look, um, and so then from there on out, basically in a matter of what it sounds like a week, she loses custody of her kid for suggesting treatment that was already suggested by Maya's doctor, right? Loses custody of her kid, is set up with a parent advocate, which the agencies tend to do, especially if you're going through a court case, right? And the state takes custody of kiddo. She spends 80 plus days at the hospital, and basically, mom is like, I'm assuming very flustered and frustrated by saying, I did not abuse my, like, why am I having to agree to the fact that you're saying that I abused my kid when I did not? And unfortunately makes the decision to commit suicide, right? And uh, puts all her stuff together before she makes that decision, and then decides, okay, you know, basically take care of my child. Now, what really intrigued me is Dr. Sally Smith. There was an expose that they did in Florida. Okay. If you're from Pinella County and whatnot in that whole area, and I'm a little surprised that there's not more YouTube videos about this because it really should be. Let me see if where did my, here it is. This doctor, yo, and it just makes me so mad. And I think that this is what, um, separates fields, right? So back in 20, I want to say 2019, 2018, USA Today Network, as well as other affiliates, they basically decided to do an expose on Pinella County because they had the highest numbers of CPS removals of kids, right? A lot of stuff was happening down there. One specific doctor that they would use to testify because she's contracted with the agency was Dr. Sally Smith. And this specific article actually captured a video of Dr. Sally Smith at a training center. This is Dr. Sally Smith right here. So let me go down a little bit so I can play it for you guys because you guys are going to be like, what the hell? This is her at one of these conferences.
It's about twice as likely that there'll be drug abuse and alcohol abuse in the family in households where there are victims of child abuse. Disability is a risk factor. In Florida, prior report to the child abuse hotline is a very high risk factor. It's worse than many other parts of the country, and it's complicated, but we see over and over again children who are reported to the hotline, and sure, there are people who are wrongly accused, but I don't know. Anybody show of hands in the room? Anybody had 10 reports to the child abuse hotline regarding their family?
Her question to everyone was, everybody raise your hand. Have y'all had 10 reports regarding to the hotline? Let me tell you guys something. I know what the hotline looks like. I've worked at the hotline, okay? And just because a family gets 10, 15, 30 reports does not necessarily mean anything. When I heard her say that, I said, "Oh, Lord have mercy." I knew I had heard about this doctor. I was like, because I heard that there was a court, something had happened with her. But she's, well known in Florida. So I was like, what the, hey. So if you're from Florida, right here, she is like, tear families apart and immediately will give the diagnosis, you are a parent abuser. I mean, it was very much what she said in this clip was very much that feeling that she is not for families sticking together and working things out. She's for tearing them apart. Let me keep playing this and let me know your thoughts in the comments.
So, once, yeah, maybe that was just a fluke, but, over and over and over again, and then they keep coming up with there's no findings, doesn't make any sense. One of the things we have to really keep in mind is that the primary problem with child abuse is that the person who has abused the child is full on lying about what happened. And we have to
Wow.
remember that what we're being told is the history is a bunch of baloney, and it's our job to figure that out.
um as and let's be very clear, She's a pediatrician for child abuse. So she's looking for various, if there's a bruise or if there's a mark, she's looking for the physical body of the child, right? She's not actually doing the assessment, the investigation. She's not actually going in the home. She's not checking refrigerators or making sure that there's food in the home. She's not doing any of that, right? But she is giving the diagnosis of like the physical body, right? So that is where we are different. So, if there is a a genetic disorder, so a rare disease, which is what Maya, when she said it, I would imagine would constitute a lot of hospital trips, would constitute pain and follow up and other things. But that right there, we are not. I I'm not a lie detector, right? We're not. That's not what we do. And my understanding is, as a doctor, she's assessing the physical well being of this child that she's probably only seeing one time, if not a couple, depending on, what disorder they have. But to me, this one is what raised so many flags. When I heard her say that, I was like, let me hit play.
So again, in the history, and this is a little different because in many of these children, they're young children, and so they can't give their own history. So we're getting history from the caretakers. And again, keep in mind that they're usually lying. So we have to ask lots of questions to trip them up. Most of the time.
And keep in mind, the caretakers are usually lying, and we have to ask them a lot of questions to trip them up. This lady is the CPS Kevorkian, okay? I'm just letting you know. That's mierda de más, girl, de más. Uh, she's been Deborah. So kids get hurt, okay? Kids get hurt. Um, so I would imagine somebody asking me something happens to my little ones, God forbid, somebody's a pediatrician is going to ask me lots and lots and lots of questions to see if I'm lying, because she's also the lie detector here. I was like, oh my, give me my Coke when I heard her say that. Yes, thank you so much, Posh. Thank you, thank you. Hey, Christy B, how are you? I know, Bobby. Oh my gosh. Y'all, yeah, feel free to tomato her, because seriously, that just, I heard her say that. I said, no, she didn't. So she gonna ask me a lot of questions because, we're lying. All right.
And they've thought of the main lie, but they haven't thought of all the details. So if you keep asking questions, the story falls apart. And so that is where we get this idea of sort of inconsistent details, different details provided by different caretakers when they're interviewed separately. If we keep going backwards, then we often get information in terms of what was going on leading up to this injury that the child sustained. When in a child who's brain dead was the last time that they were up and running around and playing, because that tells you that at that point, this injury had not occurred. So we can narrow down the timing of the injury and the perpetrator and things like that by asking a detailed history. So these are just other kinds of questions that we would ask. We can, again, get a little bit of an idea, just like asking women how they settle arguments. What's discipline at your house? Now, a lot of these children who have had DCF come to their home multiple times are pretty savvy with this. And
Oh man. I mean, she's got a lot of preconceived notions and stereotypes. A lot of those families, yeah, when a CPS reports come in, it's documented how many calls. That's part of the process. Let me just give you guys an example. Say a call goes in, right? And the person that's taking the call will take that information. The person that's reviewing the information, it's typically reviewed by a group of those workers or caseworkers or social workers, depending, right? And they start reviewing. Well, it sounds like in 2015 there was 3 calls. Okay, what was the 3 calls about? Well, little Jimmy got in trouble in school with truancy. That's a call that the school made. Oh man, you know what? 2014, little Sammy Jimmy's sister came to school and she was pretty hungry, but it sounds like that was fixed. They got food from the food bank. Perfect. Does that really require an investigation that is about safety? Is there harm to the child at this moment? That is how it's assessed. Now, when it's physical abuse, it's a little bit different because you're looking at, well, okay, patterns of behavior. Is little Jimmy come to school with a bruise every day? Is there new bruises every day? Like those are things that differentiate versus kind of like the needs to the physical abuse part. Thank you. And poverty, and please note this, man, I used to have some heated conversations with some folks. Poverty doesn't mean neglect. Okay? Just because you live in Beverly Hills, Melrose Place, up wherever the hell you live, and little Jimmy and mom over there or dad over there live in a one-bedroom apartment with 3 or 4 people, that is still considered housing, whether you like it or not, whether your stereotypes are okay with it or not. I used to have some heated ass conversations about this all the time. All the time. Yes, there's people that live in poverty, but guess what? As long as a child is alive and getting their needs met every day, that's okay. It's okay. Is it an ideal situation? No, but that's what the situation is. Can't go removing every kid because they live in poverty. What? I cannot. That I well, um, it's a huge monster to take. I will say that much. It's a huge monster to take. I mean, I would think of my own childhood, right? Like you can't help but think, like I'm sure I used to take my parents' food stamps back in the day, where instead of having a card, we didn't have cards. We had the actual paper food stamp, and I'd go to the donut shop and give me a donut. Was that poverty? Probably. I wasn't cooked a huge meal at home, but it was food. It was breakfast, and it was how I would use those food stamps. Yeah, but that's not neglect. It's not ideal, it's not healthy, but shit, it's not neglect. I know the books. I know. You've been diagnosed with CRPS, complex regional pain syndrome. Oh, really? So Maya was diagnosed with that, right? That is interesting. SW, you're gonna have to tell me more. I mean, we might have to pull you on that one when we do the review for this docu-series that's coming out, because I would love to hear. I mean, I wouldn't know anything about it. I'm not you guys are medical professionals, some of you guys in here. So I'm curious to know what that was or what that is like. Let me hit play so that we can finish this up, and then I'll show you guys some other things.
And they talk about timeout, and they say, "Oh no, I never get hit," and things like that. Well, the younger ones sometimes are, out of the mouths of babes come great information sometimes. So most of the time the older kids have been well coached, but the little kids can't keep the story together if you keep asking questions. So we want to look and see if the explanation is consistent with the injury. Are there any really objective witnesses? And is what we're being told consistent with the child's age and developmental level?
Mm-mm-mm. So that kind of gives you an idea of, I mean, the way in which this doctor kind of moved around back, and this was back in 2015. But here's the deal. This specific article, it's called Torn Apart, and the Bad Medicine Critics Say Powerful Pediatricians Too Quick to Diagnose Child Abuse, Traumatizing Families. Let me tell you something. There was a case that she dealt with, okay, where the dad was I think he was like a fireman or something. And, you know, he was arrested for child abuse. But he was like, I didn't do it. Like, he had nothing to do with the situation. And so then it kind of got exposed that, these medical professionals, it's not even so much social workers, but those medical professionals that are, a lot more skilled and trained, right? Are quick to call something child abuse. And you already know that a medical professional outweighs a lot more than a traditional social worker, right? Because they're examining the body. Yes, 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 absolutely. Let me hit play on this and you tell me your thoughts in the comments. This is literally about 3 years old.
Florida doctors hired by the state to identify child abuse.
And while they're praised for saving countless lives, what happens when these doctors get it wrong?
Contact 5 investigator Katie LaGrone spoke with a handful of Florida families who say they were torn apart when the diagnosis proved to be something else.
Make a cube.
You make a cube.
For Viviana and Jeremy Graham, life revolves around 4-year-old Tristan. But 4 months into their adventure as a family, this trio was torn apart.
Call 911, Tristan's having a seizure, and I see him holding Tristan, seizing.
Doctors determined Tristan had a brain bleed, and a child abuse pediatrician knew why. Physical abuse, specifically abuse of head trauma, such as violent shaking injury, according to court records provided to us by the parents.
He was seen by so many different doctors before we took him again to the hospital the second time. So to us, we were like, what is going on?
Child abuse pediatricians are specially trained to spot child abuse. There are 22 in Florida who work as experts across the state. It's an industry where records are kept private to protect children.
And that's also the problem is, are these records releasable to, say, the ombudsman's office, say, independent reviewers, right? Because that is where things get a little bit tricky. You could hide behind the HIPAA laws when it comes to children. As you know, information should be kept private. But when it comes to investigation, even these medical professionals need to be investigated as they should. If they're trying to hold licenses, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's very easy to hide and omit things. But one thing that you would have to understand is how, if I'm a doctor and I said, well, Miss Rabbit over here abused her child based on this, and I don't have a really good idea of this child's medical history, we have a problem. And that is what Dr. Sally and some of these pediatricians tend to do. They don't have a good idea of a child's medical history. If a child had issues at birth, say that the child was born not breathing or with an umbilical cord around their neck, or there was trouble there. How do we know that later on in life, this child's not going to have issues later on, right? Ear infections is another one. There's a lot of studies out there that show that ear infections has been known to cause, issues later on in life. But it's not always by the parent. There are medical things that happen here. We have to be more well-versed in this area because some of these people are just giving you that label and destroying lives.
And while their opinions can save thousands of lives each year, court records now reveal they can also tear families apart when conclusions implicate parents who seem to have done everything right.
We sort of got ambushed, we felt like.
Once the state pediatrician called it abuse, Tristan was removed from home. Jeremy arrested for aggravated child abuse. A West Coast Florida firefighter and paramedic, his mug made headlines.
I didn't know if I was ever going to get him back.
The Grahams are among a small but vocal group of Florida parents.
It's like losing everything.
Now speaking out about a system they say doesn't always get it right.
So I said, we didn't do anything. She said, no, yes, you guys did. Wow.
Last summer, Vadim Kushner and his wife also found themselves on the defense after seeking help. A state child abuse pediatrician determined their newborn seizures were the result of shaken baby or blunt force trauma.
They took our kids.
The Kushners fought back, spending $30,000 on attorneys and experts who argued the baby's condition resulted from a complicated birth, not abuse. The judge agreed, criticizing the state's doctors for not knowing the month-old baby wasn't breathing at birth, the umbilical cord wrapped tightly around his neck. One admitted he never reviewed all the baby's medical records.
We do.
And you make that assessment that this was child abuse, but you have yet to review these records. You destroy families that way, you guys. And these are the professionals. These are the ones that go to school, and these are the ones, you know what I'm saying? And I give them a lot of shit because they deserve it. They shouldn't even be licensed at this point. Yes. I give them a lot of shit for that. We need to hold these people accountable, right? Like, you can't just be doing that. I can't, yo. But let me hit play on this.
Everything we can to make sure we make the appropriate diagnosis.
Dr. Suzanne Haney leads a National Pediatric Child Abuse Council. She's not involved in any of the Florida cases, but says these experts are extensively trained. Studies show they're less likely than other doctors to diagnose abuse.
Because we do understand all of the possible, mimics and other misdiagnoses that can happen.
She says abuse has to be diagnosed by a team, not just the expert who should know the child's full medical history and interview the parents directly.
The parents don't know why.
Attorney Jordan Abramowitz says that doesn't always happen.
The procedure of how they commence their cases is flawed.
Last year, he represented this young South Florida family, torn apart when the state pediatrician concluded abuse caused 22 fractures and bruises on their newborn.
All I can think of was,
Grandma Nydia Ortiz.
this is a mistake. This is going to be corrected. It's not right.
The child's pediatric records were not reviewed before determination was made. The parents were not interviewed. Their medical history wasn't taken.
Had that happen, Abramowitz claims they would have learned these parents spent weeks at doctor's offices over concerns about bruise marks. One even suspected the baby had a rare genetic disorder. Turns out she did.
In criminal trials, you're innocent until proven guilty, but child abuse cases, it felt like the burden fell on us. That was the most surprising.
Yes.
8 months after the state.
Yes, because and they're civil matters until they're criminal, right? So CPS cases are civil matters until they're criminal. Keep that in mind. When they're criminal, then it's a different monster. But that's a civil case, so they're treating it like they. And I mean, the fire guy, the firefighter, he had a whole mug, he had a whole accusation, he had a whole crime, and he didn't even do anything. These doctors, this isn't just one specific case. This isn't just Maya's situation, right? This is a families in Florida, right? These are actual, like this is a specific county, Pinella County. In Florida, there's a shitload of things going on over there when it comes to CPS. This is a concern. Truly. This was just 3 years ago. So what does it look like now? I kind of wonder. They don't. They don't. Trust me. We do need, just like you need prosecutors, you need public defenders. Okay? You need you need, because there are people out there, there are parents out there that do neglect and abuse their kids. It's true. However, there needs to be a balance to this. You can't have professionals using biases and their stereotypes and doing shitty work to make life-altering decisions upon these families and upon these kids. This is a life-altering decision. When you take a kid out of a home, you're talking about taking them out of their place, whether it's a good home or a bad home. Okay, it doesn't. You're taking him out of his environment, and whether you're saving his life or not, it's still impactful, and they still require treatment. Now you have a medical thing going on, and just imagine 10 times the trauma that's going to happen, right? Not only because of whatever the medical situation is, but whatever follow-up is there, right? It is a horrible situation to be in, and how vulnerable you are because you're in it.
It removed Tristan from his parents. It dropped its case. Insufficient evidence.
I'll never forgive and forget.
I want her to remember that she didn't break us.
Every year, Viviana sends the state pediatrician a holiday card. 2 years ago, the doctor wrote back.
I try very hard to be thorough and get it right, but perhaps I need to be more careful to consider gray areas.
This is Nydia's son in May, moments after a judge ruled there was no child abuse and criticized the state's doctors for not interviewing the parents to assess their medical histories. This young family reunited immediately.
It was a nightmare.
It took 7 months, and this grandmother's life savings.
Wow.
$130,000.
How many cases are out there where the parents don't have money, didn't have the ability to get the right expert to see what's going on, and the parents lose their children?
For weeks, we've asked the State Department of Health for answers. They've refused our interview requests, haven't fulfilled our public records requests.
Of course not.
Last week, I sent them a list of questions, still no response. Meantime, these families want change, a new law that would require child abuse pediatricians interview parents directly, and in some cases, get a second opinion before a child is removed from their parents.
Makes sense.
Katie LeGrone, WPTV News Channel.
Makes sense. It's true. There should be other opinions. Isn't that crazy, Tara? You said perhaps. Look, I was like, so the mom, hold up, let me go back a little bit. She sends the doctor, okay, I'm pretty sure this is, what's her name, Sally Smith, a Christmas card or a card, and the doctor actually wrote back. Let me play this. This is crazy.
Every year, Viviana sends the state pediatrician a holiday card. 2 years ago, the doctor wrote back.
I try very hard to be thorough and get it right, but perhaps I need to be more careful to consider gray areas.
Perhaps. That is such a child abuse, the gray areas language. It's just disappointing, yo. It's disappointing. And so why I was like, I know that this Take Care of Maya will be released here in, I think, about a week or so. I wanted to get ahead of that piece because I wanted to make sure that at least you, my subbies, those that are watching me, understand if you're in that Florida area, that doctor specifically, you gotta be careful and take your notes and any type of interaction that you have. And I hate saying it that way, but it's true. It's a sad, sad situation. Um, how do you get your life back? So then I was looking at YouTube real quick just to see how many people have actually. Did I close it? I probably closed it. Let me go back to it real quick. I was looking at YouTube to see if anybody had actually done any type of maybe looking into her and whatnot. And there have been creators out here actually, which is phenomenal and awesome, that have exposed Dr. Sally Smith. Okay. Crimes and Investigations. These are a lot smaller channels, but there's some, Fly Nubia Queen, I believe, was one video that I saw. Okay. Where there was leaked audio, and I don't want to play it because I want to be mindful of the copyright because she does copyright her stuff of legally kidnapping kids. Like that's what she put out there. But people have been calling Dr. Sally Smith out, and I don't know how she still has any type of ability to practice. I just don't get it. Always, always. Yes, and make sure, and you know what? Nowadays we got these little camcorders on our phones. You know what I'm saying? Camcorders, video phone, camcorders. And you have voice notes. Record them. I do that all the time. All right. Today is Friday, June 9th at about 5 p.m. I'm here with child, myself. We are recording, and you're recording the doctor and I mean, I don't know how you cannot. I don't know how you cannot not do something like that because it's gotten to the point where people will put crimes on you. I hate to say it, but it's the truth, especially when it comes to kids. I mean, it's just how it is. Yes, very much so. Very much so. Absolutely. And make that voice note part of your note taking. Camcorders, if you know, you know. I know nobody knows what a camcorder is nowadays, but I do. Can you tell how old I am? It's a sad situation, but so just giving you guys a heads up, we're going to review that one, and then we'll kind of go from there. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'm going to head out because I could feel the medicine is like leaving, and I'm still very congested. So I need to like figure myself out. I know I dated myself, right? I sure did. I sure did. I dated myself. But you guys are awesome. Make sure you hit that like button. I'm gonna head out because I gotta go tend to a baby bunny. Okay. Who's upstairs and she's probably asking for me. You guys have a great one. I'm out. I gotta go tend to my nose. Bye, guys.